Thank you very much for inviting me here. And as you mentioned, it's a little bit of a coincidence that I'm here, because I'm here for 3-4 other reasons, but I'm very happy to join my colleagues from Bulgaria here today, and let's see what will happen. Today is a rather great day for me, because this book, where the book of Cities for People is coming out in Bulgarian, is a great moment for me, and I'm very happy and grateful for the people here who have found it worth of publishing. And I've been asked a number of times if I will sign books, and I will sign until midnight, but not beyond that. So I will be happy to do that. But now let's get started. I will talk a little bit about livable cities for the 21st century, and my whole point is that if we take people serious in city planning and use that as a strategy, we will have a much better, more livable city which is worthy for this century. And that is actually also what this book is about. It should have been the Bulgarian version, but I have no photo of that one, so we put this other one in. We could also call the presentation From Jane Jacobs to Livable Cities, because last year was the year when Jane Jacobs turned actually 100 years, but she wrote her famous book in 1961, and so also it's something about the whole period, the 50 years from she started to Gehl over there in New York. We started this day by introducing Robert Moses and Jane Jacobs. I'm very happy about that. But I'll tell about these 50 years from she started to say, hey, something is wrong, until now we have a number of examples of cities which have become substantially better. We have for 50 years now in the 20th century had two big problems. We have two old planning paradigms who have completely dominated the way politicians and professionals have been thinking. One have been the modernism. And I take the year 1960 as a starting point. We saw also in the Swedish presentation how this modernism was really great in around 1960. Cities were going to expand, and this fantastic new idea of modernism was going to be the road to a much better world for people. It actually came from the 30s and way back, and 20s, way back where was Corbusier saying, never build cities, build freestanding buildings, never build spaces for people, built in between spaces between freestanding buildings. And this is how it looked in Sweden in the golden days of the 1960s, when this new modernism was being introduced. What really happened was that instead of building, which we have always done in our history of human settlements, we've done one building at a time. We've done the buildings along the public spaces, along the streets we put the buildings, along the squares we put the buildings. Suddenly we had to expand the cities very fast, and to overlook this complex situation, and in accordance with modernistic ideas, all the planners went up in aeroplanes and started to organize the objects like this from 5,000 meters up. And the site planners, they went up in helicopter and then moved around and adjusted the compositions, and suddenly said, wow, this is a good city. So they went on to the next. What really happened at that time, and I take still 1960 as a starting point, because that was really when he started to go on in a big way. What really started was that nobody was asked to look after where people were. The people scale was completely neglected. The 5 kilometer an hour scale, the eye level scale, was neglected. Nobody, no profession, neither planners, architects, or even landscape architects really looked carefully after this scale, and actually nobody knew about what the issues were down where people were, because all this was throughout the history of human settlements, was done by tradition and experience, which was handed from one generation to the next. But the modernists, they said, we have to throw everything out because old man is dead, modern man has been born, everything should be different. So we have modern man, and he has his good time here. I call this the Brasilia syndrome. This is the capital of Brazil. It was a competition in the mid-50s where I was trained as an architect, by the way, and I learned to do all this very carefully. And bingo, this is a good city. So Brasilia was a big thing, and Brasilia from the air looked like an eagle. It was meant to be an eagle. The head was the parliament, and all the institutions and everything was separated. You live here, you work here, you have recreation here, and you have freeways in between. How can life be any better? Brasilia is great from the aeroplane, and also Brasilia is great from the helicopter. All the wonderful Niemeyer houses for the government and for the parliament is lying there around this rather substantial park in the middle. Fantastic, fantastic. What is not fantastic is where the Brazilians move around. Down in eye level, Brasilia is actually shit. Nobody thought about how it would be to be Brazilian. Nobody thought if they could afford to give all the Brazilians each a helicopter so they could enjoy Brasilia. So now they're just trampling along on these endless routes. It's not made for people, it's made for aeroplanes. I'm very critical about the modernists. I really think that they screwed up a lot of things, and they threw out a lot of knowledge which we had about good cities and good habitat for human beings, and started to manipulate with people's life. And I even have said, and will repeat, that if a bunch of professionals at any time was asked to reduce life in the public spaces, it could not have been done better than was done in the principles of the modernists. Have a nice stay here, sit there with your girlfriend and think about the future. The other big paradigm which has dominated the planning and the cities in the 20th century has been the car invasion. Again, I take 1960 as a starting point, and that was when really the cars started to flow into Western Europe. America was a bit before, but around this time it really started to be serious, and we have various stages of the car invasions. This is the first stage, 1905. One car has arrived, but people are still walking in Copenhagen as if it was their city. It was wonderful, beautiful to walk in Copenhagen at that time. There was one tram and one car. Next stage was that the automobile really arrives and people are screaming and leaving the public spaces as fast as they can. These guys are taking over. Third stage, the car is king. Moscow. Could be anywhere. So we have had these two paradigms which have been very, very dominating. And actually in the car invasion, everything has been done in all the cities all over the world to make the cars as happy as possible. What was known about quality for people by this time, by 1960? Actually, almost nothing was known, because everything we knew had been thrown out by the modernists, and it was tabula rasa, and the modernists and the motorists, they just had a very great time. That was the time when from New York we heard the voice of Jane Jacobs from the neighborhood saying, hey, if these modernists and these motorists are going to plan our cities, they will all be dead. And she said, look out of the window, see how the city really works. See that it's the streets which makes the cities. See how the street ballet, the street watchers, all these things which are part of a healthy neighborhood, look how they work. Also, all this is interwoven with the story of my life. I have a sign here saying 10 minutes, and that's a very short period of time. You shall have a short story of my own life. I graduated as an architect in 1960. I was trained in the 50s to be a good modernist. And I rushed out of School of Architecture to do all these wonderful things which would make people very, very happy. Then I married a psychologist, and then I had all these nasty questions at home. Why are you architects not interested in people? Why don't they teach you anything about people in School of Architecture? Have you thought about why your professors go out 4 o'clock in the morning to photograph the architectural objects to make sure there are no people to distract you when you look at them? Well, that was not very easy for a young man, so I had to go back to School of Architecture to 40 more years to find out what they didn't told me in the first 5 years. So I spent 40 more years in architecture, and I made a few books about how people use cities, whatever, and I was even forced at some point to make a company to help the cities to do the things we have found in our research. Here we are. Now, at this point, 2016, we know quite a few things. There has been made, not many, but some substantial pieces of work has been made. We have this little overview here. Up top, of course, is Jane Jacobs, and down in the very bottom is the Bulgarian version of this book. But we have actually accumulated quite a bit of knowledge about, and we know for sure that the physical environment influences the quality of people's life extremely much. We shape the cities, but then the cities shape us. We know that for sure. We know that every time you build anything, you manipulate with people's quality of life. Problem is that most architects and planners and traffic planners, they don't know what the manipulation, what kind of manipulation they're doing and what the effect will be. But we actually have a great knowledge of things. This is just an example. Here is the best public space in the world, the Campo in Siena. And you go there and you say, wonderful, fantastic, is this a miracle or just common sense? And actually over the years we made this list of qualities which you should look for. And going to the Campo in Siena, you find, oh my word, every single quality criteria has been carefully observed. And furthermore, it is very, very beautiful and well done. That is quality criteria number 12. So that would be the reason. It's not a miracle, it's sheer logic that it works very well. Also then, I'll not talk too much about this, but it's been a big surprise for me. Some years ago, I was approached again by a big foundation, say, sit down and write down everything you know while you can still remember it. And I said, I have no time. They said, isn't that a matter of how many assistants we can offer you? And it was a very rich foundation, so suddenly I had time. So we sat down and wrote this book, and it is now, I think this is number 28 version here in Bulgaria. And in 6 years we have either published or contracts on 32 languages, and that shows that there's an enormous interest around the world about having people issues more carefully looked after in architecture and planning. It's not because the book is fantastic in any way, but there are not many books about it. 5 minutes left, oh my Lord. Here we go. Here we go. Here's the Kazakh people ready to go out and transform Kazakhstan. And we even now have books about how you should study people. That was what they never told us in School of Architecture. They said, look at the form, but actually good architecture is an interplay between form and life. So you must know about form and you must know about life in order to make anything like good architecture. We now in the 21st century have definitely a new planning paradigm. What is wanted now is lively, livable city, and we must make sustainable and healthy city. The first thing is that after all these years where we've seen these cities deteriorate, people are more and more focused on having good living conditions, good livability, good quality for life. Also, we have known that we have to do much more to the climate challenge, so we have to make sustainable cities. If we walk and bicycle more, it's good. But also these ways of moving has to be combined with excellent forms of public transportation so that there will be alternatives to the 120-year-old technology of private cars, which is completely outdated in modern cities. Go to Mexico City and see how you can service a city of 15 million with everybody having a rubber wheel in each corner. Impossible. Old-fashioned. We also now have a new challenge, that is the sitting syndrome, that we realized that for 50 years we made increasingly cities which invite people to sit throughout their life, and what happens? They die in great numbers. And now everything is done to have people walk and bicycle. This is World Health Organization. They have their action plan here. Make sure in all cities that you do everything for people to walk and bicycle as much as possible. If we look at this closer, if we are good to people in public spaces, to people walking, to public life, and good to the bicycling, then we actually have a more lively, more livable, more sustainable, and more healthy cities. What can we do now? Yeah, what we are really good at, that is improving quality in existing cities. Are there cities who invite people to walk and bicycle as much as possible? Certainly there are by now quite many. One of them is my hometown, Copenhagen. They started 54 years ago. They started to push the cars back from Main Street. It was said, we are Danish, we are not Italians, it will never work in Denmark. Next year we were Italians because we had more space to be Italians, and we become more and more Italian as the years go by, because we are Homo sapiens, we are people, and we need space to be human between other human species. Copenhagen was the first city in the world where the life of the city was systematically studied. It was done by the university, and it has influenced the city planning enormously, and later on it influenced all of Denmark, and I'll show you a little bit. Here's Copenhagen, 1962. That's what was done for people, one street. Here's the same area today, what is done for people. Gradually, every day the city has become better, invited more and more for people walking, for public life. We can see three phases. The first period was where they made pedestrian streets and pushed the cars back, please walk. The next period was the next 20 years, where increasingly we were concerned about making room for people to sit, to enjoy, to have cultural events, whatever, so that get rid of the car parking and free the public spaces to people activities. We are now in the third phase, where the thing is to make room for people who want to be active, to swim in the water of the harbor, to bicycle, and to just have general fun. And we have in Copenhagen now this policy, public policy, we will be the best city in the world for people. And they are doing whatever they can to be a very good city for people. All the streets have been changed. Instead of being a lot of asphalt, they are now 2 lanes and a median and trees and bicycle lanes, whatever. So what we know from Copenhagen is that if you invite people by making good public spaces over a long period of time systematically, what happens? More and more people come out and use the public spaces, and we have a culture of public space use. Actually, Copenhagen is completely full of people on all suitable days because we have the spaces and we have got the tradition. What happens if you make many roads? You have much traffic. In Copenhagen we made many nice places for people, and we have many of these silly Danes who are not Italians, but they are acting like Italians all the time because they have the spaces. What happens if you do a lot to invite bicycling? Again, Copenhagen could be an example. Copenhagen has a complete citywide network of good bicycle lanes inside the parked cars and with curbsides to the traffic. And it has over the time been developed so there is now a transportation system for all generations where you can bring everything to everywhere. The crucial thing in a bicycle system is the street crossings, and they have really studied how to make safe bicycle system, big bicycle crossings and street crossings. My grandchildren of 9 and 10, they are allowed freely to go all over the city on their bikes because it is safe. In the train, to have a good system for bicycles, you have to integrate it with the other systems so that you can go long distances, which you can if you can take your bicycle in the train and go long distances. What has happened in Copenhagen is that really we have developed a bicycle culture. Everybody bikes, from old people to businessmen to pregnant mothers to small children. All of them are bicycling. Even the crown prince can be found bicycling sometimes. The crown princess is better because she bicycles a bit more, and it is very good when the kings and crown princes they bicycle. That helps. But also in Copenhagen, we are now in a state where 45% of everybody going to work in Copenhagen, they arrive on the bicycle. The Minister of Culture in Denmark is reading her favorite book. But more important, all this, which starts in the School of Architecture and develops in Copenhagen, has spread to the whole nation. So now they have an architecture policy saying, put people first in your architecture. And this is the government going up to the Queen to get their commissions as ministers. They arrive on bicycles, and they ask the guards to look after the bicycles while they go to the Queen, so no bicycles are stolen that day. Are there other cities who are doing this? Yes, indeed there are. I could tell you a long story about Melbourne, it's the best city in the southern hemisphere. I have no time. So Melbourne is pretty good, and it's like Paris, but the weather is much better. And if you don't know what to do, move to Melbourne. We could talk about Sydney. It's good for something, but it was not so good in the city center. They are full speed making the city center green, putting out the cars and the buses, whatever, putting in trams and bicycles and whatever. We can talk about New York, we haven't got the time, but that's another city where I have been involved in advising them what to do. Mayor Bloomberg had this plan of making New York sustainable, and he did all the bicycle lanes over there, and then he thought he would make nice squares, and they had not the room, but then we found out maybe you don't need Broadway for traffic, and then they closed bloody well Broadway at various points, and this is Times Square in the morning of 2009, and this is Come on now. Come on now. Maybe it won't. No, it won't. No, but Times Square has been closed to traffic and is full of people. It took 5 minutes for people to take over Times Square. I'll not go more into details, but just say that now they are even more eager. This is New Yorker. They say now we are into the recreation subject in Times Square. Couldn't we bring in the bisons also from the prairie, whatever. And I could talk about Moscow. I haven't got the time really, but I was approached by this deputy mayor of Moscow and said, we want you to do the same as you've done in New York and Moscow. When can you come? I can come on Monday. And then we went to Moscow and had the shock of our lives because Moscow was completely ruined by cars and parking. And this is a nice street in Moscow at that point. Really nice, actually. And this is a pedestrian crossing where you can check your abilities to slalom. First they said, how many books have you published? We'll publish them all in Russian. They did it in 3 months. City of Moscow is the publisher, and the worried guy is the Danish ambassador. And then we were hired to make a plan for how Moscow could be humanized, how the public life in Moscow could be brought back, and how the car traffic could be redirected and the parking be organized, whatever. No time to go into detail. Oh, this is, I had a talk with Sobyanin, the mayor, and he said, what will be in your report? I said that the idea of parking on Main Street, Moscow, is not a very good idea. I mean, on the sidewalks on the Main Street, because there's no room for people. Then I came back 2 months later, no cars on Main Street, Moscow. They have very efficient political systems over there. And if somebody forget about it, mayor has a number of cars like this. We take your car and take it up on the car and bring it straight to Siberia. If you see it again, it's just a miracle. It's very efficient, but actually what is important about Moscow is there is a miracle has been created. This was the Main Street sidewalk in 2011 with cars, no space for people, and the whole sky was taken up by advertisements. 1.5 years later, the grey street was becoming green. Instead of the cars, there were benches all the way, and all the advertisement has come down, so you could see Kremlin in the distance. And what has happened is that in Moscow, they've just gone on and on with these programs, and they have created a citywide bicycle system. They have got hold of their parking, which was completely uncontrolled. Now it is increasingly controlled, so you can cross the streets, whatever. And the mayor of Moscow is going around telling other cities how to make livable cities. I think Jane Jacob would have loved to hear that by now the mayor of Moscow goes around to say these sort of things. This is spreading rapidly. This is the mayor of Vilnius, Lithuania, telling people not to park in the bicycle lanes. And this is Bucharest, Romania. And they've just got my book, so they're about to sort out this so that they could have a livable city also. I think that I will stop here. We'll not just stop here. We'll just take it one in. What we can do is we can repair existing cities, but what we still have to be good at is to make fantastic new, people-friendly new towns. So all this knowledge from Jane Jacobs and myself and other people is used to make existing cities very nice, but still they make the most awful new towns worldwide. All my books, I'm very proud about this, all my books have come out in Chinese. And I know they're widely distributed because I've dedicated all of them. Very big work, actually. But my great sorrow in my old age is that they've not had time to read them over there yet, but maybe it will come. We are still seeing modernism at large. We are still seeing the bird-shit architects flying all over the world and dropping their towers here and there and everywhere. We are still seeing very poor quality of details in cities at eye level. This is new buildings in London. Thank you, Norman Foster. And this is new buildings in Eurolil. Thank you, Rem Koolhaas. And this is, and everybody, they put in a lot of people to show that we are really interested in people in our profession of architecture and planning. And still, many of the places look like this. And we have evidence that people never liked modernism and this kind of housing where the details were not looked after. All the restaurants in the world, they know exactly how they should be good places for people or they will have no customers in the restaurant. All the amusement parks in the world know about to do it, know about how to do small scale. All the resort hotels all over the world, they make fantastic peoplescapes or they will have no customers in the hotels. Why can't architects and planners do the same with places where people shall live and work? I just wonder. A few places, and I'll not go much into this at all, this is a place in Sweden, one of the few which have actually listened to all these lessons and have taken them up and have made a fantastic new place. This is, and if you take this list of the 12 things I mentioned, which is actually in this book, and go to this place in Sweden, you find that all 12 things are carefully observed and it works wonderfully, and people, they are queuing up to be able to live such a place. I will bypass this little story and end up by saying that the most important scale of all scales are the people scale. If you have no energy to do, or only have energy to do one scale, do the people scale. Forget about the helicopter scale and the aeroplane scale, because it's a people scale, it's a city at eye level and at 5 kilometers an hour, which really is important for the quality of our human environments in the cities. So, welcome to 21st century.